Welcome to Lessons in Leadership. Steve Adubato with my colleague Mary Gamba. Mary, did you know that at a different point in my career, I had a very talented executive producer over at News 12, and it was, in fact, the Ivy Charmatz, who is Senior Vice President, Mercury Public Affairs. How great it is. Listen, I don't want to make this about me because I'm uncomfortable doing that.
Yeah, no, you're not. Yes, you do.
Ivy, what made our chemistry, like, it was right there immediately?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I think we have a similar work
It's not about you, Ivy. It's about me right now.
Correct. I know. I forgot. It's been a few years, Steve, since we've actually worked together. I forgot that role. It's I don't know. We have a similar work ethic. We clicked. We became friends. I consider you a friend. I think, how long has it been? I think it was like maybe 16 years ago that we first started. And it was
we used to do it. We did it live.
And we did it live.
Meaning stuff happened. Stuff didn't work. Guests weren't there. The phone lines didn't work. This is interesting because this is about leadership, and this is not a crisis. It's TV. It's not brain surgery. But why were you always like this? Calm.
Well, thank you for thinking that I was. I appreciate that. I think, and it's funny because I do this, and some people tease me about it. Early on, I realized that in order to do something live and in order to do something off the cuff, you have to be so buttoned up. You have to be more prepared than for something that's taped. Because when you have everything completely buttoned up and everything is very strictly planned, you can be flexible. And if you don't have a plan, you can't be flexible. You just have a mess. And so we always went into everything with a plan. And I like to think that between, neither one of us were new at this. And so I think that between always having a good plan, we always had great communication between us. And no matter what happened, we just knew between our planning and our experience and our gut instincts, we just knew. And we also trusted each other, which is
here's the word trust.
That's a very big deal. When you do live TV with someone, you have to trust them because you need to share your ears and eyes. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be great.
Mary, along those lines, we do our programming live to tape. A guest just asked us earlier today. Remember, she asked us, she goes, if I make a mistake, you can edit this, right? And I said, why are you asking that? We're doing it live. And she goes, but it's not live. And I said, yeah, but it is. Mary, talk about that, the trust and the chemistry. It's not me and someone. It's not really, in all seriousness.
No, it's anywhere. The trust and that Ivy's talking about. And Steve, you've shared a lot of great stories, many of which involved Ivy. You've also shared horror stories at other networks.
I was going to say, what did I walk into here?
That did not involve Ivy. And I believe that a lot of that goes to chemistry. We've seen it on our own small team, especially when you work in a small team and everyone is responsible for so much. That natural chemistry, there's been people on our team that were just like, yeah, they're mad, but they're fine. And you don't really need the chemistry. But if that chemistry is off and if that rhythm between that communication and especially that trust, if you don't trust that person is there and has your best interest in mind front and foremost, it's a disaster. So I appreciate you, Ivy, so much. I know you've been a resource to us over the years, and just having that friendship as well over the years has just been great.
I make the transition. Go ahead, Ivy, pick up your point.
I was just going to say that it to kind of bring it back to leadership, though, too. It's you doing it in live TV is an example, but when you are supporting someone and you're working together, when someone whispers in your ear, whether it's in an IFB or a note that they pass to you or a phone call or a text, and you trust that person, you all of a sudden have gained this whole other realm of knowledge and experience as long as you trust them. And so it's beneficial.
It's interesting you're saying this because in our leadership seminars, there's a section, Mary, I wrote a chapter in this new book, Lessons in Leadership 2.0, the tough stuff. I called it strategic micromanagement, Ivy, and I said, here's the thing. We can trust our people because we trust that they care, they're smart, they're talented. But sometimes we can't simply trust blindly that they interpret things exactly the way we do. They understand exactly what needs to be done. So even Mary and I, great partnership, 24 years, our interpretations of things aren't exactly the same. So there's a trust but verify, or verify, trust more. Help me on that.
But that's a blessing. But that's a blessing, because you don't always want to surround yourself with people who see things exactly the way you do. You want people who can say, have you thought about this? Or I disagree. I don't think that, I understand why you see it that way. I understand why you think that, but have you considered this? And that is also where trust comes in. When you know that someone is there for your best interest and you have a shared goal, sometimes the way to achieve that goal might have a slightly different approach, but that's why you communicate and you talk things through. And I know you well enough to know you do not like to be surrounded by people who just constantly tell you how great you are, although it's nice.
No, that's not really true.
80-20, Ivy.
I do. Sorry, I didn't get the updated rule book. But the truth is, but that's another reason I think, Steve, in all honesty, why we did work together and so well, is because I knew at the end of the day, even though you were the face of what we were producing, it was my work product. And so I took so much pride in it. And so if I thought that something could be better, or something that you were doing I thought could be done differently, I wasn't afraid to tell you. It was, I was much younger back then. So maybe it was a little intimidating, but I did it because it was my job to do that. And I think that's how we, also sort of forged our friendship.
So Mary, here it is. What Ivy described, and this, again, I'm not going to turn into the Steve and Ivy show. That's not really the point of it. But I'm going to say this. How we keep saying on a great team, Mary, everyone has to be a leader? What Ivy just described is exactly it. Ivy would often not just do what I wanted, or whoever the executive producer, whoever the on-air, all that stuff, the talent. Trust me, the word's used in some cases where it's not appropriate. Point being, Ivy would often say, why don't we do this? We shouldn't do that. Mary does the same thing. That's what I mean, Mary. Everyone has to be a leader. They can't just stay in their lane, wait to be told what to do. Our director, Elvin, is constantly saying, wait a minute, hold on. That's not going to work. We need to do this. That's what I mean by leadership, Mary. That's not a question. It's just, I want to...
That's 100% what you mean by leadership, because I need to trust, and that takes time. It definitely takes time.
Right, these are none of the things we said we would talk about. These were none of the things that we
just throw the questions out.
Go ahead, Mary.
But it is so true, and it's so important in leadership, no matter the field, and having that level of trust that you can go to somebody in your orbit, even with your spouse or with your partner or with a friend. Having that level of trust to say, hey, and I always struggle with that. I have conversations of, I wish I could be more, the same way that I am with Steve. I wish I could be that way with my family sometimes. And, and just be upfront and be like, listen, the way that you said this hurt, or, fill in the blanks. But having that level of trust is so important in all aspects of leadership, for sure.
Real quick, your role at Mercury Public Affairs is, Ivy?
I do all things communication. Media relations, communication strategy, crisis comms, regular PR, public affairs, all the good stuff.
And your work as a top-level producer in media, transitioning to the, quote, other side, smooth?
Yes, smooth.
Because,
first of all, Mercury is a wonderful firm, a great team. But also, I think the core of what I did for so many years as a journalist is tell stories. And what do people want in the private sector? What do they need? They need people to tell their stories. And so it's my favorite thing to do. And I'm so incredibly blessed that I get to continue to do it, even though it's a little different now. Storytelling is so powerful, right? I've said this a million times already, but storytelling, it inspires, it educates, and it builds community. And when you can do those things, that's such a powerful thing to be able to do for communities, for companies, for anyone.
You've been a great storyteller for a long time, and there are more stories to tell. Thank you, Ivy.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, Mary, I'm sorry none of the things you wrote in the notes, not that I didn't trust them, I just made stuff up. And
I trust you to take this conversation in the right direction, and as always, you did.
Steve, I have notes for the interview. I'll give them to you later. I'll tell you how I thought of it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, the Helix, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, Fedway Associates Inc., Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Veolia, Resourcing the World, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Great drive fuels the leaders of tomorrow and today. Great vision paves the way for a brighter future. Great ambition goes places, moving onward and upward. Great empathy finds strength in kindness and in each other, working together to create something bigger than they ever imagined. Great minds can change the world, and great minds start at Seton Hall.
Lessons in Leadership would like to thank our newest sponsors who make our programming possible, including The Helix, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Hi, everyone. Steve Adubato. This is Lessons in Leadership with my colleague, Mary Gamba. Mary, we're going to kick off this series that we're doing in cooperation with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. It is called Lessons in Leadership, Discovery and Innovation. Who better to kick it off than the chairman at the Port Authority, Board of Commissioners, Kevin O'Toole. Right, Mary?
That is absolutely correct. So happy to have Kevin with us here to kick off this Discovery and Innovation series.
Kevin, we're going to have a whole bunch of folks come in, talk about discovery, innovation, pivoting, adapting, all these things. Why is this such an important, and how is that connected to leadership, by the way, and why is it so important, please?
Well, listen, if you're a leader, you have to innovate. And we've got 8,000 employees that are innovating every single day. And frankly, I think the real lesson is you should be talking to those 8,000 employees that every day they get out of the bed to do something special and different and advanced and innovative at the Port Authority. And if you don't do that, then you're not doing a justice to your job and you're not doing a justice to the next generational leader.
Kevin just teed it up. You're going to see leaders listen to leaders in the not-for-profit world, in the corporate world, and in the higher ed community, all sorts of folks discovering, innovating, because it's the only option. As I said in a recent interview we did with Kevin, change is obviously the only constant. When people say, let's keep it the way it is, not happening. So for Mary Gamba and our colleague Kevin O'Toole, the chairman of the Board of Commissioners at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, this is Lessons in Leadership, Discovery and Innovation. We're now joined by Seth Wainer, who is Program Director Innovation, Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Seth, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for joining us on this series of Discovery and Innovation in New Jersey. Talk about your role at the Port Authority.
Yes, the Program Director Innovation for the Port Authority. I co-lead what we call our Innovation Hub. This is a big dotted line organization that really spreads out throughout our various units, our businesses, including airports, the bridges and tunnels, the path system, et cetera. And we work on trying to find new ideas and new ways of doing business and try to introduce those ideas into our traditional work. We try to focus on a few things that we think will have real transformational impact. Things like autonomous vehicles, artificial intelligence, electric flight, and sustainability.
You mentioned a couple of different areas. Give us a tangible example of the outcome of the research and the work that you and your colleagues are doing in this area.
Yeah, one of the major results of doing this kind of work, and we're just starting off our third year, we're partway through our third year now, is the cultural transformation, which is very important, right? Trying to get people to think differently, trying to feel comfortable trying new things in their work. But on a practical level, we're really pushing the envelope with what's possible using technology. So we have a few programs using artificial intelligence focused on things like trying to make sure we know in real time what's going on path cars, and maybe even get into a place where we can predict what's going on with path cars that might, the air conditioner breaks and it gets a little hot in there. We'd like to know that before it happens, ideally. We have a few pilots on making roads safer, right? Our traffic engineering group and those folks introduced a few items last year. We learned that New Jersey drivers are a little more aggressive maybe than the artificial
Don't
intelligence.
talk about me like that, Seth.
Developed elsewhere. No, but all in all, this is about really infusing our services with a 21st century technology footprint, because that's how we serve the customer better.
To be clear, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is responsible for not just PATH, but the airports in the region, the bridges and the tunnels connect New York and New Jersey over the Hudson River, and a whole range of other initiatives. So innovation, technology, infrastructure, you put it all together. That's the work that Seth and his colleagues are involved in. Mary, please.
Sure. We can't talk about innovation technology without the elephant in the room, which is artificial intelligence. And I would love to get your sense as an expert in this area of is it as scary as we all think? Is it going to take over like you see in the movies? Or how is the Port Authority using it, embracing it as a very productive tool toward innovation?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. At the outset, I would say that the Port Authority has a very clear vision and goal for using AI to improve the customer experience, right? Our executive director, Rick Cotton, our chairman, Kevin O'Toole, are laser focused on this as a high priority. We believe that this is likely to be as transformational as the internet or the advent of the personal computer. But in terms of some of the concerns, right, you folks worried maybe AI is coming after their job. We're really focused on lowering costs, increasing revenue, transforming the customer experience. And as a public agency, we have this public record of switching, for example, to all electric tolling, but making sure folks keep their jobs and find good work. So we're really not in any way trying to replace anybody. We're trying to offer much more to the public with the same level of staffing and the same level, frankly, of budget that we currently have. So we view AI really as a force multiplier. And I would add, kind of one last piece on that, which is AI is in our lives every day. Everyone with a smartphone, the number one use of AI are those annoying ads you get that, highlight, maybe a shirt or a car you took a look at once and poof, you're just getting 1,000,001 ads. And that's not really creating any social benefit. But if we can use AI to save everybody 5 minutes or 10 minutes at the airport, that's a huge benefit when spread across the 140 million plus annual travelers. So we're really focused on using the technology within the public transportation footprint, which is different than what the private sector seems to be going towards at this moment.
By way of background, Seth, you were trained in what field?
I was trained in political science and then been doing the government innovation work for about the last 15 years. So it's kind of a blend of bureaucracy and understanding how organizations work, and then really being aware and keen and focused on the technologies that might have that direction.
In terms of leadership, have you always viewed yourself as a leader?
I think I've always viewed myself as someone who's optimistic, who likes to try new things and go after difficult results because, frankly, that's the most fun. And quickly, when I entered the work world, I started out in corporate retail doing planning and analytics. I quickly realized that it's important to work as part of a team, and it's important to act in a way that others trust you and want to follow you towards a particular vision, whatever that might be. And, little by little, have sort of put that together into a bigger portfolio of understanding what leadership means in the workplace. And especially in the public sector, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of specificity to understanding the trust that the public puts in an agency like the Port Authority and using that all wisely.
Mary?
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more. I know you talked about the autonomous vehicles. Can we talk a little bit about that as well as the drones? We were doing a little bit of research prepping for this segment. And I'm curious, you think Jetsons when I'm dating myself right now, but the Jetsons and things flying in the sky. So can you talk a little bit about the autonomous vehicles and the drones and how they're really being used to assist the experience of your customers?
Yeah. And I think these two technologies also follow the narrative I wanted to set with artificial intelligence, which is in our daily lives in the private sector, this might mean something very specific. So in the case of autonomous vehicles, the private sector is very focused on robo-taxis. You hear about that in San Francisco. At the same time, my mom backs up her Nissan. There's 1,000,001 sensors dinging and going off to let her know that the garbage can is too close. So what we're thinking about, right, with autonomous vehicle technology is how to infuse this into the public transportation network. So one great example that we're looking at in the horizon is we've got the new bus terminal plan, $10 billion, and we have the exclusive bus lane. This is from the 1970s. Anyone, like myself as a kid coming into the Port Authority bus terminal. I was gate 405, by the way, from Rockaway, New Jersey.
Gate 405.
You could fit about 600 buses per hour going through that lane right now. And there are certain reasons you can't get much more than 600 per hour. This is the most effective traffic lane in America, by the way. So I don't mean any negative shade by saying this, but if you could enhance these buses with autonomous vehicle technology, they could travel more closely together. Perhaps we could get up to 800 or 900 buses per hour. And this is a great win for the commuter who then might wait a little less for their bus to get through to the gate. They get out, they go about their day. So that's how we're kind of thinking about it a little differently, right? We're thinking about autonomous vehicles in mass transit. Right now, we have a few pilots that are about to begin, one at JFK Airport, one at Newark Airport. These are like fifth pilots focusing on how to move the customer, maybe that last mile to the air train, or maybe get them to the terminal if the air train's a little further away as we begin to redevelop the various airports. So I just want to frame that as the difference, which is we're not focused on sedans for rich folks that drive themselves so you can fall asleep on your way to work. We're focused on how to get the traveling public to where they're trying to go a little safer, a little faster than it was before. So that's a fun one. Drones also following a very similar arc. So our interest in drones is around the middle mile. So the middle mile is how shippers and logistics centers ship from one warehouse to another. And we think this is a potentially exciting place to look. We're not focused on sort of retail and drones flying through the sky and landing on your roof. That's not really our headspace. But if there's a way that the Port Authority could develop this into the future to give an opportunity for goods to get to Brooklyn from New Jersey a little faster, or to Manhattan from points in New Jersey faster, that's been the mandate for the Port Authority for 100 years.
That's right.
Right. That's sort of baked in where we are. And, you didn't date yourself at all with the Jetsons analogy. There's actually a great company out there we're always staying in touch with called Elroy, named for the kid.
Oh,
that's
right.
great.
So we've signed with Skyports. They're helping us kind of look into this. Skyports is doing mail delivery in Scotland. They're doing ship to shore work in Singapore. They have a wonderful track record of both safety and public sector use cases. So we're working with them, and this is very exploratory, right? Part of the work with the Innovation Hub is starting really early, starting to bake this into the process of our thinking as we develop over the next 100 years.
Important stuff. Really important stuff. Moving, it sounds so simple. Let's move people back and forth from New York and New Jersey and around that's where it begins to be complicated. And so Seth and his colleagues are involved in it every day. Seth, appreciate you joining us. Thank you to you and Rick Cotton, your executive director, and our longtime friend, the chairman of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Kevin O'Toole, who introed this segment on lessons in leadership. Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Steve.
You got it. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague, Mary Gamba, has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media. Lessons in Leadership would like to thank our newest sponsors who make our programming possible, including The Helix, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Welcome back to Lessons in Leadership, and Steve and Mary. Hey, Mary, let's do the thing that we prepare for and very rarely ever get to. It's the leadership quotes, the inspirational quotes that we think are interesting, right?
That's exactly right. And I always love to see, I give you a list, and I always like to see which one you like. So you go first, and then I'll go.
Okay. I was debating a few of these. But the Winston Churchill one I always like. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. The heck does that mean?
That means so much. The success is not final. You and I talk about that all the time. We have never arrived. If you believe that I have reached success, I have arrived, I have gotten to that finish line, I guess the finish line, and I use the word I guess intentionally, if you're literally in a race, if you're a marathoner, of course you've reached the finish line. But when we're talking leadership, communication, lifelong learning, there is no finish line. Sure, you want to have goals and benchmarks. If not, you just feel like you're constantly on a hamster wheel. But you want to constantly make sure that you're evolving, growing, learning, and never just be satisfied with the status quo.
Okay. Alvin, come on in. Okay. So we've touched on a little bit of this in the past. And Frank, anytime you have something, jump in. You don't have to be asked. Frank Brown, our great audio engineer. So go to this question of you're never finished. Again, we've talked about this a million times in sports, in business, everything. So, Alvin, are you okay with, you go through a whole production day, right? Frank is in here too. Frank is, for those who don't know our show, and I'm surprised if anyone doesn't, Frank is the one with all the technology around him. Alvin hides his.
Very important.
Alvin hides his. So Alva's our director. Frank is our audio engineer. So here's the thing. You go through a production day. We did one recently on our public television side with the Caucus Educational Corporation. This was great. Everybody's congratulating themselves. This was great. This was great. We had a new producer it was her first day, and she did a great job. And very quickly, I was making notes as to what needed to be done differently next time and what needed to be improved. Alvin, let me ask you something. Shouldn't I wait to do it? Shouldn't I hold off? Why can't I just say, great job, everyone? That's it. We're done. We're there. What's the need? A, what's the need to do that? Because I'm not going to stop doing it. B, are you okay with it?
I'm definitely okay with it because at least now everyone knows what happened for the day instead of holding off and putting it in an email. So I think at the end of the day, it's great to either encourage everyone for the great day or let them know where we went wrong so that it doesn't happen again.
Or both. Listen, it could be a great day, right, Frank? It could be a great productive day, but there are a couple things that need to be improved upon. Why is it, oh, Steve, why do you have to do that? We just had a great day. Like, why are you putting that negative bent on? And I'm like, no, we were fine, but we need to improve. Go ahead, Frank. Isn't that what sports teams do every day?
It's called a recap. I mean, you recap just so you can prepare for the next one. The bottom line is there's nothing wrong with that quick recap because you've had a great day. They're just some negative thoughts or negative things that need to be addressed don't make it a bad day.
Is it negative, Frank?
It doesn't put a damper on it. It's not negative. No, it's being proactive for the next time. That's all. And constructive criticism.
I'm sorry, Frank. And to Frank and Alvin and Mary, I do it in real time. And this is hard. I said this to one of our new producers the other day. I said, listen, I do it in real time because it's happening when it's happening. And I know the book on leadership, not mine. Others say, do it in private. We've had this conversation a million times. But if it's right out there and it's not just for you, but a lesson for everyone else, my mind says, do it, but do it in a respectful way. Not everyone can hang with that, Mary.
No, I agree. And I've talked to you when you have given the feedback in a very constructive way.
It's not me, it's anybody who does this, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. We've all been there when we, lose it a little bit. Our voice may get a little bit high or a little bit loud with some, we may say some things we may regret. But the majority of the time, if the feedback is given in such a way where the intent, again, being intentional, where the intent is to build and grow for the next tape day, absolutely do it in real time.
So there it is. We never get there. We're never done. We're always improving. Frank, Alvin, Mary, Scarlett, April, Sylvester, Amy. Listen, it's a great team. That's it. Lessons in Leadership. Now you know everything you need to know. See you next week. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, the Helix, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, Fedway Associates Inc., Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Veolia, Resourcing the World, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media.
Great drive fuels the leaders of tomorrow and today. Great vision paves the way for a brighter future. Great ambition goes places, moving onward and upward. Great empathy finds strength in kindness and in each other, working together to create something bigger than they ever imagined. Great minds can change the world, and great minds start at Seton Hall.